is this particular product going to make sense for my deal?
Yeah.
And I know that it's really going to be determined on a case-by-case basis. But the most frequent question I get is, Ryan, what is the minimum enterprise transaction value in which this product makes sense as a tool?
Yeah, it's one we get a lot too, and I'm not surprised to hear that a lot of people are funneling those questions to you. Once upon a time, it was a quantum, maybe $100 million, but it's come down, which is really applicable in the Canadian sense, where you're going to have average deal sizes, which are much more in that maybe $10 to $20 million mark. So when you do have a lot of deals there, when does it start to make sense? The insurers are willing to come down to deals because they're comfortable with the diligence, around $20 million. But that's also a mark where the economics make sense for the minimum premiums that the insurers will charge for them to, with limited bandwidth and a lot of opportunities to underwrite these risks. This is worth their time. But it's also the economics for the buyer or the buyer and seller, because the premiums often shared to entertain, because with a smaller enterprise value, that minimum premium is going to take up a bigger percentage of the deal size. So does that make sense for the motivations of the buyer to distinguish their bid or to extend out their survival of reps, or for the seller looking for a clean exit? So does this minimum premium in the context of this $25 million deal make sense?
You're talking about the minimum size, and once again, it's going to be determined on a case-by-case basis, but a ballpark would be no less than enterprise transaction value of $20 million. That's going to tie into your premium. What would be the sort of minimum out-of-pocket cost that an insured is going to incur for using this product?
Yeah, great question, and you're getting at kind of the underwriting fee here. So exactly, the two cost considerations for anyone entertaining this coverage is premium that goes to the insurer to cover the various deals they're underwriting, but also during the underwriting process, they hire transactional risk counsel. You would know this well. And that comes in, I would say there's a range of probably $35,000 to $45,000. That's a fixed fee, paid up front, one time, and it flows right to the hired counsel that will help the insurer underwrite this. So let's guide towards a $200,000 all-in cost for getting reps and warranty insurance done at the $20 million mark.
Now that we know that the minimum cost outlay for insured is going to be $200,000.
On these smaller deals, yes.
What would be the manner in which that cost is split between the buyer and seller?
It's a business decision. I think in the context of the, it can be shared. A lot of times it is. I was going to say in the context of smaller deals, oftentimes it's shared, but we've had one recently where it was borne completely by the vendor, or it might be adjusted to the purchase price. It's kind of however the negotiations are going between buyer and seller, but both sides are getting good consideration here, so that's what sometimes leads to the sharing of the cost.
So now that we've talked about enterprise transaction value, premiums, one of the other questions I get asked about all the time is retention levels, and what is the appropriate retentions that a buyer and seller should be responsible for. What do you currently see in the marketplace?
Yeah, so we've been kind of focusing our chat on deals on the smaller side. When you say the enterprise value of 20, what's the pricing I should think of? The retention typically in the market is 1% of your enterprise value. $50 million transaction, 1% is $500,000, typically shared between buyer and seller. What does that mean? It means in the event of a proven claim of a breach in the reps and warranties, the buyer will be on the hook for the first 50%, the seller's on the hook for the next 50%, and now you've eroded that retention, that self-insurance piece, like a deductible that we know, and you're into the policy. What I did want to say is that's kind of market norm. After 12 months, it typically steps down to 0.5% of enterprise value, which is driven a lot by some of the claims information data that's out there. But when we kind of bring it back to what we focused on those smaller deals, is there will be minimum retentions, just like there's minimum premiums that insurers will look for. And let's guide to $250,000 to $300,000 as a minimum retention on smaller deals.